She was on her knees, scrubbing the marble floor while speaking Italian on the phone. The mob boss overheard her and asked, "Where did you learn that?" What happened next changed everything. Before I continue with this story, tell me in the comments, where are you listening from and how old are you? I'd love to know who's on the other side. She was on her knees on the cold marble floor, her hands red and raw from the icy water and harsh soap, scrubbing a wine stain that had been spilled the night before during one of those endless dinners where men in dark suits spoke in low voices about things she preferred not to know. The phone vibrated in the pocket of her gray apron, that apron that smelled of bleach and resignation, and without thinking twice she brought it to her ear while continuing to pass the brush in circular motions over and over, because that stain had to disappear before he came down for breakfast. The voice on the other end of the line was soft, familiar, a little piece of another world that no longer belonged to her. She began to speak in Italian, those words flowing from her mouth like a river that had been dammed for years, now flowing with a naturalness that surprised even herself. She spoke of simple things, about the weather, about how she missed the cobblestone streets, about the coffee that didn't taste the same here. She didn't feel the footsteps behind her. She didn't hear how the steps stopped abruptly. The deep voice cut through her mid-sentence like a knife. "Where did you learn that?" The phone nearly slipped from her hands. Her heart stopped for one complete second before beating again, this time racing, hammering against her ribs as if trying to escape. She turned slowly, very slowly, her knees still sunk in the wet floor, and saw him standing there. Vincent Russo. The most dangerous man in the city, they said. The man who had turned her life into a silent hell for the last 3 years. Tall in that dark suit he always wore impeccably. Black eyes fixed on her with an intensity that froze her blood. She stammered, bringing a hand to her chest where her heart threatened to burst out. "I asked you something." His voice was dangerously calm. "Where did you learn Italian?" She swallowed hard. The words stuck in her throat like stones. On the other end of the phone, the voice kept calling to her, worried, but she couldn't respond. She couldn't do anything but stare at those eyes that pierced through her. I have to hang up," she whispered into the phone, and before they could respond, she ended the call with trembling hands. The silence that remained was deafening. Vincent took a step toward her, then another. His shiny shoes stepped on the wet marble, making barely any sound, like a predator approaching its prey. She wanted to stand up, but her legs wouldn't respond. She stayed there on her knees, with the brush still in her hand and the apron soaked. "You know," he said, stopping right in front of her. "In all these years I've never heard you speak like that." She lowered her gaze. The dirty water in the bucket reflected her distorted face. "Answer me." It was no longer a request, it was an order. My grandmother," she managed to say, her voice barely a thread. "My grandmother taught me. When I was a child." "Your grandmother?" "Yes, sir." Vincent stood motionless. She could feel his gaze burning the crown of her head, studying her, dissecting her. 5 seconds passed, 10, an eternity in which she didn't dare even breathe. "Look at me." She slowly lifted her head. Their eyes met, and in that moment something changed. Something in his expression cracked for a fraction of a second, so fast she thought she'd imagined it. But she saw it, that crack in the iron mask. "What was your grandmother's name?" The question caught her off guard. "Rose," she answered without thinking. "Rose Moretti." And then she saw it. She saw it clearly. Vincent Russo, the man who never showed emotion. The man who had ordered other men beaten without blinking. The man who ruled his empire with an iron fist, turned pale. Completely pale. He took a step back. "That can't be," he murmured, more to himself than to her. "Sir. Rose Moretti." He repeated the name as if it were a prayer or a curse. "From Boston." Now it was her turn to look at him confused. Yes, from Boston. She lived in the North End near the Old North Church. But, how? "Stand up." His voice trembled, and that scared her more than any shout. She got to her feet with difficulty, her knees aching, the apron dripping dirty water on the freshly cleaned marble. Vincent looked at her as if he were seeing a ghost. "When did she die?" 12 years ago. "But I don't understand why. What was she like?" "Excuse me. What was she like?" This time he did shout, and she instinctively flinched. Short, she said quickly. The words stumbling over each other. Blue eyes, she had white hair, always wore it up in a bun. She loved to cook, made the best ravioli in the world, sang old songs while. Frank Sinatra, Vincent interrupted her. She sang Frank Sinatra. Her breath caught. How do you know that? Vincent ran a hand over his face. When he lowered it, he seemed to have aged 10 years. He swayed slightly and leaned against the wall. The powerful man suddenly turned into something more fragile, more human. Because I knew her too. His voice came out hoarse, broken. Rose Moretti saved my life 30 years ago. The world stopped. She looked at him without understanding, her brain unable to process what she had just heard. The words floated in the air between them. Impossible, absurd. That can't be true. Vincent lifted his gaze and looked straight into her eyes. I was 18 years old. I had escaped from Chicago, from my father, from everything. I arrived in Boston with nothing, dying of hunger in the streets. One night I collapsed in front of her door. She brought me inside, fed me, took care of me for weeks without asking me anything. She taught me Italian. She taught me, his voice broke. She taught me that there was still kindness in this shit world. She felt her legs weaken again. No, that's not. What's your name? He asked suddenly. Your full name. Nina Moretti. Moretti. He repeated the surname as if it were sacred. Then you're her granddaughter. Her only granddaughter. Tears began to burn in her eyes. And you've had me cleaning your floors for 3 years. You've treated me like I was nothing. The silence that fell was so heavy it hurt. Vincent now looked at her with an expression she couldn't decipher. Horror perhaps. Disbelief. Something deeper that had no name. How did you get here? He finally asked. What does it matter? The tears were already rolling down her cheeks. What does it matter how I got here? You brought me. 3 years ago when I had nowhere to go. When? I didn't bring you. I never. Vincent stopped. His face changed, his eyes narrowed. Wait. 3 years ago? Yes, your son, Michael. He hired me. He told me he needed a trustworthy employee, that he'd pay me well, that I'd have a place to stay. I had just arrived from Boston, didn't know anyone, had nothing. My mother had died, I had no family left, and he appeared like an angel, or so I thought. Vincent's expression hardened. Michael hired you? Yes. Did he tell you why? Did he tell you how he found out about you? She shook her head, wiping away the tears with the back of her hand. He just said he needed someone trustworthy. Someone who had no ties here. Someone who she stopped. The weight of understanding falling on her like a slab. Someone nobody would miss. Vincent closed his eyes. Son of a bitch, he whispered. Son of a bitch. What? Fear climbed up her spine again. What's happening? When Vincent opened his eyes again, there was something lethal in his gaze. Where's Michael now? I don't know. He never comes here. I've only seen him maybe 5 times in 3 years. He always sends his men, his messengers. I just clean, cook, do what they order me. And who gives you the orders? Mrs. Sophia. Your wife, she's the one who... That's not my wife. Vincent's voice was pure ice. That's my son's mistress. And you? He looked her up and down, really seeing her for the first time. You've been living in this house for 3 years, and I didn't even know you existed. A bitter laugh escaped Nina. Of course you didn't know. I live in the basement, below where they keep the wine next to the boiler. There's a little room there with a mattress on the floor and a light bulb that barely works. I come in through the back door before dawn, clean all day and go back down before you arrive. Those are the rules. Mr. Russo must never see you, they told me. If he sees you, you're fired on the spot. So I hid. Every time I heard your footsteps, I ran. Hid in any closet, any corner. For 3 years I've been invisible. The rage that crossed Vincent's face was terrifying. Where is my son? He roared, and the sound reverberated throughout the house. Nina backed away, the old fear taking hold of her again. I don't know, I swear. I'm not afraid of you. Vincent pulled his phone from the inside pocket of his jacket. He dialed a number with fingers trembling with contained fury. Bring me Michael now. I don't care where he is or who he's with. You have 20 minutes or I'll rip your head off. He hung up without waiting for a response. They stood there, he by the wall, she still with the brush in her hand, the puddle of dirty water spreading between their feet. Outside, the morning sun was beginning to come through the enormous windows, casting long shadows on the marble. Why? Nina finally asked, her voice small. Why would your son hire me just to hide me like I was? Like I was a rat? Vincent didn't respond immediately. He moved away from the wall and walked to the window, hands in his pockets, back rigid. When he spoke, his voice sounded tired. Because my son is an ambitious idiot who thinks he can outsmart me. And because in this world, Nina, information is power. If he knew who you were, if he knew you were Rose's granddaughter. What does my grandmother have to do with all this? Vincent turned to look at her. She never told you. She never told you what she did during the war. The war? What war? She was just an old lady who made ravioli and sang old songs. Your grandmother, Vincent said slowly, was one of the bravest women I've ever known. During World War II she hid more than 40 people in her basement. Jewish families, resistance members, children. She fed them, protected them, risked her life day after day. When the war ended, she had contacts all over the country. She knew people, knew secrets, could get things no one else could. And when I showed up at her door, half dead and being hunted by my father's men, she protected me just like she'd protected all the others. Nina felt the floor move beneath her feet. That can't be. She never told me any of that. Because people like Rose don't brag about their heroism. They carry it in silence, like a scar no one else can see. Vincent approached her again. I owe her my life. I owed her everything. And when I left Boston, I promised her that if she or her family ever needed anything at all, I would be there. The tears came back, but this time for different reasons. Then why? Why did you let them treat me like this? Why did you let me live in a basement? Let them humiliate me. Let them... Because I didn't know you were here. Damn it. Vincent hit the wall with his fist, and the sound echoed like a gunshot. Because my son hid you from me. Because he knew exactly what you would mean to me and decided to use you as... He didn't finish the sentence, but he didn't need to. The footsteps heard upstairs interrupted them. Hurried steps, muffled voices. Then the dining room door burst open. Michael Russo entered with that arrogance that always preceded him. 32 years old, handsome in a cruel way, with black hair slicked back and a suit that cost more than Nina earned in a year. Behind him came Sophia, tall and thin like a whip, with a red dress that clung to her body like a second skin. What's so urgent that it couldn't? Michael stopped short when he saw Nina standing there, with her apron on and the brush in her hand. His face hardened. What's she doing here? That, Vincent said with a voice that could cut steel, is exactly the question I have for you. Michael looked at his father, then at Nina, then back at his father. Something calculating crossed his eyes. She's just an employee. What does it matter? What does it matter? Vincent crossed the distance between them in 3 strides. What does it matter? Do you know who she is? A woman who needed work. I hired her. So what? You always say you need trustworthy people. People who don't talk too much. Trustworthy. Vincent's laugh was bitter. You have her living in the basement like an animal, and you call her trustworthy. Sophia took a step forward, that cold smile always present on her red-painted lips. She has what she needs. A roof, food, work. There are people who would give anything for. Shut your mouth. Vincent didn't even look at her. I'm not talking to you. Sophia's smile wavered. Michael, however, maintained his composure. He adjusted his shirt cuffs with studied movements. I don't understand why all the drama. She's an employee. She does her work. We pay her. End of story. We pay her? Vincent turned to Nina. How much do they pay you? She lowered her gaze, ashamed. 300 a month. 300. Vincent's voice went up an octave. 300 miserable dollars. For cleaning a 20-room house. For working 16 hours a day. She has a roof and food, Sophia repeated, but now her voice sounded less sure. In a basement, Vincent turned to his son. Tell me, Michael, tell me right now, did you know who she was when you hired her? The silence that followed was palpable. Michael didn't respond, but he didn't need to. The answer was written on his face, in the way he clenched his jaw, in how his eyes moved looking for an exit. You knew, Vincent whispered, and there was something broken in his voice. You knew exactly who she was, and you decided to. Decided what, Dad? Michael finally spoke, and there was defiance in every word. Decided to give work to a woman who had nothing. Decided to be charitable. You decided to humiliate her. You decided to hide her from me. You decided to use Rose's granddaughter to. For what, exactly? To prove to me that you can. To have something over me. Michael smiled, and it was a horrible smile. You finally get it. Nina felt her stomach turn. What? Michael looked at her directly for the first time since he entered. Your grandmother helped my father. Yes. But your mother owed me. The world tilted on its axis. What are you saying? Your mother, dear Claire, didn't tell you. No, of course not. How was she going to tell you that for years she was my informant in Boston? How was she going to tell you that she sold me information about my competitors in exchange for money to pay for your college? You're lying. The words came out like a choked scream. You're a liar. Am I? Michael reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. He swiped his finger across the screen and showed it to her. These are the transfer receipts. $50,000 total, over 5 years. Every month your mother sent me reports about the Murphy family's businesses, our rivals. Every month I paid her. And when she died 3 years ago you were left alone, with no money, nothing. So I looked for you, offered you work, and you accepted without asking questions. Nina looked at the screen without really seeing. The numbers were there, the dates, everything. It was impossible, but there it was. No, she whispered. My mother wouldn't. Your mother was a practical woman, Sophia said with that honeyed voice she used when she wanted to stick a knife deeper. She did what she had to do to keep you in that expensive school, to give you that comfortable life. And when she was no longer useful to me, well, she shrugged. Accidents happen. Everything stopped. The air, time, Nina's heart. What did you say? Sophia realized her mistake too late. Her face paled, and for the first time since she entered, she looked scared. She looked at Michael, but he was too busy looking at his father. Sophia, Michael warned in a low voice. But Vincent was already moving. He crossed the space to Sophia and grabbed her arm, his fingers squeezing like pincers. What did you say? Nothing. I didn't say anything. My mother died in a car accident, Nina said, her voice trembling. She went off the road. The police said it was because of the rain, that the conditions were bad, that the brakes failed, Michael completed calmly. Yes, that's what they said, because that's what happened, the brakes failed, a terrible coincidence. It wasn't a coincidence. Vincent released Sophia and turned to his son. Tell me you didn't do it. Tell me you didn't kill an innocent woman. Innocent, Michael laughed, and the sound was like breaking glass. She was getting greedy, Dad. She wanted more money, threatened to tell the Murphys everything. She was a loose end. I just did what you taught me. Eliminate problems before they become crises. Your words, not mine. Nina collapsed. Her legs simply stopped supporting her, and she fell to her knees on the wet marble, the brush falling from her hand with a dull thud. The tears didn't come. The pain was too great for tears, too immense to fit in her body. They killed her, she whispered. They killed her, and I've been working for you. I've been living under the same roof as the people who killed my mother. Vincent stood paralyzed, looking at his son as if he were a stranger. What happened to you? He asked. And for the first time in the entire conversation he sounded old. Tired, defeated. What the hell happened to you? I learned from the best, Michael responded. You built this empire with blood, father. Don't pretend now that your hands are clean. I never killed innocent people. Didn't you? Michael approached him. What about the Rivera family? What about the fire of 1998? 3 children died in that fire. Dad, 3 children that fire was an accident. Vincent roared. I ordered the warehouse burned. I didn't know anyone had stayed inside. But they still died, didn't they? So don't come to me now with morality. I'm just what you made me. The silence fell like a slab. Nina lifted her head. She looked at both of them, father and son. Two powerful men arguing about deaths as if they were numbers on a balance sheet. And something inside her, something that had been asleep for 3 long years of humiliation, finally broke. She stood up slowly. You, she said, and her voice sounded different. Harder, colder. You killed my mother. Michael looked at her with something like boredom. Yes, well, now you know, so what are you going to do about it? Michael, Vincent warned. What? Are you going to protect her now? After all these years, suddenly you care about a maid because it turns out her grandmother was good to you 30 years ago. Please. Nina took a step toward him, her fists clenched at her sides. You know what day my mother died? Michael blinked, confused by the question. What does it matter? It was my birthday, she continued, her voice unwaveringly steady now. March 18th. I was turning 23. She was going to pick up the cake she'd ordered. It was chocolate, my favorite. She never made it home. I waited all night. I thought maybe she'd forgotten, that maybe she was working late. At 3 in the morning the police knocked on my door. Sophia looked away. Michael maintained his impassive expression. But Vincent closed his eyes, and a silent tear rolled down his cheek. I spent 3 years, Nina continued, 3 years thinking it was my fault, that if I hadn't wanted that stupid cake, if I hadn't insisted on celebrating, if I hadn't been so selfish, she'd still be alive. I ate that guilt every day. Every morning when I woke up in that basement, every night when I fell asleep on that hard mattress on the floor, I believed I deserved to suffer because she had died because of me. It wasn't your fault, Vincent said quietly. I know, she screamed, and the scream came from a deep place, from a well of pain that had been sealed for too long. I know, it wasn't my fault, it was his. It was this monster standing here in his expensive suit and his shit-eating grin, acting like killing my mother was just another business transaction. Michael sighed, as if all this were terribly boring. Are you done with your scene? And that was what broke the last barrier. Nina lunged at him. She didn't think, didn't plan, just moved. Her hands found his face, her nails scratching, her voice screaming words that weren't words, just pure sound of rage and pain. Michael screamed, trying to get her off him, but she clung like a woman possessed. It was Vincent and 2 bodyguards who appeared out of nowhere who finally pulled her away. They held her while she fought, while she kicked, while she tried to get back to him. Michael brought his hand to his face, and when he lowered it he had blood on his fingers. 3 deep scratches crossed his left cheek. Crazy bitch, he roared, pulling a gun from his waistband. No! Vincent stepped between them, arms extended. Put that damn gun down. She attacked me. You saw what she did. Because you killed her mother, you idiot. Vincent was shaking with fury. Put the gun down or I swear to God that... What? Michael pointed the gun at his father. What are you going to do, Dad? Are you going to kill me? Your own son? For a maid? Time froze. Everyone present stood motionless, holding their breath. Sophia was pale as a ghost, pressed against the wall. The bodyguards looked between father and son without knowing what to do. And Nina, still held by 2 men, saw something she would never forget. She saw Vincent Russo, the most feared man in the city, breaking. Put the gun down, Michael, he said with a tired voice. Please, please. Michael laughed, but it was a hysterical laugh. You've never said please to me in your life. I'm saying it now. Put the gun down. This doesn't have to end like this. And how does it have to end, with her calling the police, telling them everything, destroying everything we've built? Everything I built, Vincent corrected. You've only destroyed, you've taken what I made and rotted it from the inside. Because it was rotten from the beginning. Michael took a step toward his father, the gun still pointing at him. You always tried to convince yourself you were different, that you had a code, honor. But it was all a lie, wasn't it? You're a criminal, Dad. A killer, and I'm exactly like you. No, Vincent said firmly. Nothing like me. Let her go, Michael ordered the bodyguards, nodding toward Nina. The men looked at Vincent, waiting for confirmation. He nodded slightly, and they released her. Nina stumbled but stayed on her feet, rubbing her wrists where they'd held her. Michael moved the gun toward her. Get on your knees. Michael, don't, Vincent warned, but there was something defeated in his voice now. I said get on your knees. Michael's finger moved toward the trigger. Nina lifted her chin. No. What? I said I'm not getting on my knees. Her voice didn't tremble. After everything that had happened, after all the secrets revealed, she was no longer afraid. Or maybe she was so afraid that she'd crossed to the other side, where fear no longer mattered. If you're going to kill me standing. I'm not kneeling before you, not again. Michael looked at her for a long moment. Then surprisingly he lowered the gun and laughed. You've got guts, I'll admit. He put the gun away. All right, I'm not going to kill you, not yet, at least. Then what? Nina asked. Then you're going to keep working here. You're going to keep living in that basement, and you're going to keep your mouth shut about everything you heard today. Or I swear I'll not only kill you, but every person you've ever known, every friend you have, every distant acquaintance. Understood? No, Vincent said. Everyone turned to look at him. That's enough, he continued. He straightened up, and for a moment he was the dangerous man everyone knew again. Nina is coming with me, now. You can't do that. Can't I? This is my house, my family, my empire, and I say she's leaving. And I say she stays. Michael crossed his arms. What are you going to do about it, old man? Are you going to fight me? Against my men? Look around, Dad. Half the guards in this house answer to me. Not you. Times have changed. You're not the boss anymore. The air turned icy. Vincent looked around the room at the bodyguards who had appeared during the confrontation. 5 in total. None of them met his eyes. I see, he said softly. How long has this been going on? Michael smiled. About 2 years. You're good, Dad, but you're getting old. You're getting soft. And in this business, soft doesn't survive. So it's a coup. Call it what you want. Call it evolution. Michael adjusted his tie. Completely calm now. You can stay, of course. You're still my father. I still respect you in a way. But things are going to be done my way from now on. And that includes what happens to her. He pointed at Nina with his chin. Vincent stayed silent for a long moment. Then he did something no one expected. He laughed. It was a low laugh, almost sad, but genuine. You know what's the funniest thing about all this? He said. You really think you won? I did win. No, son. You lost. You lost. A long time ago. You just haven't realized it yet. Vincent walked to the window again, hands behind his back. You think your men are loyal to you? You think this house, this empire is yours now? I know it is. Then you know nothing. Vincent turned. Did you tell your men about the accounts in Switzerland? Did you tell them about the $200 million I have hidden in 3 different banks, accessible only with my fingerprints and my signature? Did you mention that all the real contacts, the ones that matter, answer to me personally and will never recognize a spoiled kid who thinks he can rule with threats? Michael's smile wavered. You're lying. Am I? Vincent pulled out his phone again. Let me make a call. One call, Michael, and your whole little coup crumbles. Because it turns out loyalty isn't bought with money. It's bought with respect. And you, my son, don't have an ounce of respect from anyone who matters. Michael looked at his bodyguards. They were looking at the floor, uncomfortable. They're lying, Michael said. But his voice sounded less sure. Right. You guys promised me. We promised what you wanted to hear, said one of the guards, a large man with a scar on his forehead. But we all know who the real boss is here. Michael's face turned red. Traitors. All of you are. No, Vincent interrupted. They're not traitors. They're smart. They know a ship without a captain sinks, and you, Michael, never learned to navigate. Sophia, who had been quiet all this time, finally spoke. This is ridiculous. Michael, let's go. We don't need this. We have enough money, enough contacts. We can start our own. With what money? Vincent interrupted her. The money from the accounts Michael thinks he controls. Those accounts were frozen 3 minutes ago. He held up his phone. A text message. That's all it took. Michael turned white. No, you can't. I just did. The silence that followed was absolute. Nina, still standing in the middle of all this madness, couldn't believe what she was witnessing. An empire crumbling in real time, a son being dethroned by his father, all because of her. All because of the granddaughter of a woman who had shown kindness to a stranger 30 years ago. Michael was breathing hard, fists clenched. For a moment it seemed he would attack his father. But then something in him broke. His shoulders fell. The mask of confidence cracked. "You always win," he whispered. "You've always won, no matter what I do, no matter how hard I try, you always beat me." Vincent looked at him with something that could have been pity. "Because you do this for power. I did it for survival. There's a difference. I hate you." "I know, and I'm sorry." Vincent sighed. "I'm sorry for many things. I'm sorry your mother died when you were so young. I'm sorry I was so busy building this empire that I forgot to teach you what really mattered. I'm sorry I turned you into this. I don't need your pity. It's not pity. It's acceptance. Acceptance that I failed as a father." Vincent approached Nina and extended his hand to her. "But I'm not going to fail the promise I made to Rose. Come with me." Nina looked at the extended hand. Then she looked at Michael, at Sophia, at the guards who now looked away uncomfortably. "Where?" she asked. "Away from here, somewhere safe. I'm going to give you what you deserve: respect, dignity, and the freedom to choose your own life. You don't owe anyone anything anymore." "But my mother..." "Your mother did what she thought necessary to protect you. She made mistakes, yes, but she did it out of love. Don't let other people's crimes define her memory." Nina felt tears burning in her eyes again. But this time she didn't hold them back. She let them fall as she took Vincent's hand. "Okay," she whispered. Vincent nodded and guided her toward the door. As they passed Michael, the young man spoke one last time. "This doesn't end here." Vincent stopped but didn't turn around. "Yes, son, it does end. It ends with every bridge you burned, every loyalty you betrayed, every life you took on a whim. It ends with you alone, with your empty ambition and your self-interested mistress, with nothing that really matters." Now he did turn to look at him. "You have the downtown apartment. You have 5 million in an account that's not frozen. It's more than most people have in their entire lives. Use it wisely. And if I hear again that you hurt someone innocent, if I even hear a rumor that you tried to get revenge on Nina or anyone related to her, there won't be a place in this world where you can hide from me." "Are you threatening me?" "I'm promising you." Vincent opened the door. "Goodbye, Michael. I hope someday you find some peace." And with that they left. They walked down the long hallway, their footsteps echoing in the silence. Nina was dazed, moving as if in a dream. None of this seemed real. Half an hour ago, she was scrubbing the floor. Now she was leaving behind 3 years of servitude, of humiliation, of pain. When they reached the main lobby, Vincent stopped. "There's something else you need to know," he said. Nina looked at him exhausted. "What else can there be?" "Your grandmother, before she died, she wrote me a letter. It reached me 12 years ago right after her death. In it she told me she had a granddaughter, that you were everything to her, that she hoped you'd do well in life. And she asked me that if I ever found you, if you ever needed help, I would give it to you." Nina's heart stopped. She told you about me?" "Yes. She even sent me a photo of you. You were a child then, no more than 11 years old, smiling with a book in your hands." Vincent took out his wallet and extracted an old folded photo. He handed it to her. Nina took it with trembling hands. It was her, yes, much younger, standing in front of her grandmother's house in Boston. She remembered that day. She remembered that book. It was fairy tales. "I searched for your name when I received the letter," Vincent continued. "But I couldn't find you. Your mother had moved, had changed her last name after divorcing your father. I lost track. And then," he ran a hand over his face. "And then Michael brought you here, right under my nose, and I never knew, because I'd never seen you in person. The girl in the photo had grown up, had changed, and I was so busy with my business that I didn't even pay attention when my son hired someone new." "It's not your fault," Nina said softly. "Yes, it is. I failed your grandmother. I promised I'd take care of you if I ever found you, and instead I had you living in a basement in my own house. You didn't know. I should have known. I should have paid more attention. I should have been better." Vincent looked at her with shining eyes. "But I can be now. I can give you what your grandmother wanted for you. A dignified life. Opportunities. Freedom. Nina held the photo against her chest. Why? She asked. Why do you do all this? You only knew my grandmother for a few weeks, 30 years ago. Why does it matter so much? Vincent smiled, and it was a sad but genuine smile. Because at that moment when I was at my lowest, when I had lost all hope, your grandmother looked at me and told me something I never forgot. She told me the true measure of a man isn't in how much power he has, but in how he uses it with those who have none. He paused. I built this empire. I did terrible things to get here, but somewhere along the way, I forgot that lesson. Michael is the result of that forgetting. A son raised in power but without understanding of responsibility. Outside, a car waited, a black Mercedes with tinted windows. Vincent opened the door for Nina. Where are we going? She asked. First to a hotel. The best in the city. You're going to take a hot shower, eat a decent meal, sleep in a real bed. Tomorrow we're going to sit down and talk about what you want to do with your life. If you want to stay here, if you want to go back to Boston, if you want to study, work, whatever. I'm going to support you, not as a debt, but as. He searched for the words, as what your grandmother would have wanted. Nina felt a lump in her throat. She got in the car, Vincent entered after her, and the vehicle started smoothly. As they drove away from that marble house of secrets, Nina looked out the back window. She saw the mansion getting smaller, saw the high gates that had been her prison for 3 years, saw that whole world of luxury, built on lies and blood. And for the first time in a long time, she felt something like hope. But the story didn't end there. It couldn't end there. Because in Vincent Russo's world, things were never that simple. 2 days later, Nina was in the hotel suite watching the news on television, when she saw the headline. Businessman Michael Russo found dead in his apartment. The remote control fell from her hands. Vincent, who was in the other room talking on the phone, came running when he heard the crash. What happened? Nina pointed at the screen with a trembling hand. Vincent looked at the news, his face turning to stone. On the screen, a reporter was speaking in front of a luxury downtown building. Police report they found the body this morning. Apparently it was a suicide. Russo left a note confessing to several crimes including the murder of Claire Moretti 3 years ago. No, Nina whispered. No, he wouldn't have. Vincent turned off the television. It wasn't a suicide. What? Listen. Vincent sat on the sofa in front of her, hands together. There are things I haven't told you. Things about how this world really works. Did you kill him? The question came out before she could stop it. No, not directly, but, he sighed. When you have enemies, real enemies, and suddenly those enemies discover you no longer have your father's protection, that your accounts are frozen, that your loyalties were bought and not earned, well, things fall apart fast. Nina felt nauseous. So it is your fault. You took everything from him and I gave him the chance to leave. I gave him 5 million to start over somewhere else. He chose to stay. He chose to try to maintain power without the resources or protection to do it. Vincent looked at her steadily. Your mother is avenged, Nina. Not in the way you expected, maybe, but she's avenged. I didn't want this. I didn't want him to die. Didn't you? Vincent raised an eyebrow. Are you sure? Because when you scratched him, when you attacked him, I saw something in your eyes. I saw the same thirst for justice your grandmother had when she protected her refugees from the Nazis. I saw the same fierceness your mother probably had when she did whatever was necessary to support you. Violence recognizes violence, Nina, and you recognized it in me, the same day I saw it in you. Nina stood up, walked to the window. Below, the city stretched in all directions, thousands of lights in the falling night. Each light, a life. Each life with its own secrets, its own tragedies. What about Sophia? She asked without turning around. She left the country this morning, Argentina, I think. We won't hear from her again. And Michael's confession, was that real? Real enough. The details about your mother's murder are all there. Signed in his own hand. The police will close the case. Nina finally turned around. Did he write it? Vincent didn't respond, but his silence was answer enough. So we'll never really know what happened in that apartment. No, we never will. They stayed in silence for a long moment. Outside, police sirens wailed in the distance. That sound so common in the city that most people didn't even notice it anymore. I want to leave, Nina said finally. I want to go back to Boston. Okay, I'll buy you the ticket tomorrow. I don't want your money. Then what do you want? Nina thought about that. What did she want? For 3 years she had wanted to escape. Then for 2 days she had wanted justice. And now that she had it, in this twisted and bloody way, she didn't know what to feel. I want to know the truth, she said finally. The whole truth about my grandmother. About my mother. About everything. No more lies. No more half-truths. If I'm going to carry this, if I'm going to live knowing that the son of the person who saved me died because of what happened to my mother, I need to know the whole story. Vincent nodded slowly. Okay, but prepare yourself. The truth is rarely what we expect. They sat down, he on the sofa, she in the armchair in front of him, and Vincent began to speak. He spoke for hours. He told her about his childhood in Chicago, about his brutal father who beat him, about how at 17 he witnessed his father kill his mother during an argument. He told her about his escape, about how he stole money from his father's safe and ran to the border. He told her about Boston, about the weeks he spent on the streets, slowly dying of hunger and cold. And then he told her about Rose. It was February, he said, his eyes lost in memory. One of the coldest Februaries I remember. I'd been days without eating. I'd collapsed in front of a building thinking it would be my end. And then that door opened. Your grandmother came out, saw me lying there, and instead of walking past like everyone else, she carried me inside. She was a small woman, your grandmother, but she had incredible strength. Nina smiled despite everything. She was tough. The toughest person I ever knew. Vincent leaned forward. She nursed me back to health. Fed me soup, gave me a warm bed, asked for nothing in return. And when I was strong enough, she taught me Italian. Said it would be useful where I was going. Where were you going? New York. I had heard there were opportunities there for people like me. People who weren't afraid to do what needed to be done. He paused. Rose knew what I was. Nina, she knew I wasn't a good person. She'd seen too much evil in her life, not to recognize it. But she helped me anyway. Why? I asked her that once. The night before I left, she told me that during the war she'd hidden people in her basement. Jews, resistance fighters, anyone who needed help. The Gestapo came to her door twice, searched her house. She lied to their faces while 40 people cowered in silence below her feet. Vincent's voice grew thick. She told me that she'd seen what happened when good people did nothing. She'd seen neighbors betray neighbors, friends turn on friends, and she'd made a promise to herself that she would never be that person, that she would help anyone who needed it, regardless of who they were or what they'd done. Nina felt tears stinging her eyes. That sounds like her. The morning I left, she made me promise something. She made me promise that no matter what I became, no matter what path I walked, I would remember that everyone deserves a chance. Everyone deserves kindness. Even people like me. Vincent wiped his eyes roughly. I broke that promise 1,000 times over. I became exactly what she feared. I built an empire on violence and fear. I raised a son who became even worse than me. And when the one chance I had to honor her memory came, when her granddaughter was living in my house, I was too blind to see it. You didn't know, Nina repeated. I should have known. Vincent stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. There's something else, something I haven't told you. Nina's stomach tightened. What? Your mother, Claire, she didn't just work for Michael because she needed money. What do you mean? Vincent turned to face her. She was in debt, deep debt, to some very bad people in Boston, the kind of people who don't forget and don't forgive. Nina's mouth went dry. What kind of debt? Your father. Before he left, before the divorce, he gambled. A lot. He owed the Murphy family nearly $200,000. When he disappeared, the debt transferred to your mother. The room spun. No, that's not, my mother never told me. Of course she didn't. She was protecting you, like she always did. Vincent came back and sat down. Michael found out about the debt. He offered her a deal, work for him, give him information about the Murphy operations, and he'd pay off the debt. She agreed. But you said she got greedy. that she wanted more money. That's what Michael believed. But the truth was different. Vincent pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket. I found this in Michael's apartment. After everything happened. He handed her the envelope. Nina took it with shaking hands. Inside was a letter, written in handwriting she recognized immediately. Her mother's handwriting. The letter was addressed to Michael. In it, her mother explained that she couldn't continue, that the information she was giving him was getting people hurt, that she'd heard about a warehouse fire, about the deaths, and she couldn't be responsible for more blood on her hands. She offered to pay back the money, offered to work for free for years if necessary, but please let her stop. The letter was dated 2 weeks before her death. Nina read it 3 times before she could speak. She wanted to stop. Yes. And he killed her for it. Yes. Nina looked up at Vincent, and in that moment she understood. She understood why he'd done what he did. Why Michael had to fall. It wasn't just about power or loyalty or empire. It was about something more fundamental. It was about the kind of person you choose to be when no one is watching. My grandmother saved you, Nina said slowly. And you tried to save me, but your son couldn't be saved. Vincent nodded, his face heavy with grief. Some people are too broken. Some people have gone too far into the darkness to find their way back. I tried, Nina. God knows I tried. But every lesson I taught him, every value I tried to instill, he twisted it into something ugly. He took the worst parts of me and made them his whole identity. It's not your fault. Isn't it? I'm his father. I shaped him. Every choice I made, every time I chose business over family, every time I showed him that power mattered more than people. I created him. They sat in silence. Outside, the city continued its endless rhythm, indifferent to the small tragedies playing out in thousands of rooms just like this one. Finally, Nina spoke. What happens now? Now you choose. You decide what kind of person you want to be. You decide if you want revenge or peace. You decide if you want to stay in this world or leave it behind forever. What would my grandmother want? Your grandmother would want you to be happy, to be safe, to live a life where you don't have to scrub floors or hide in basements or carry the weight of other people's sins. Vincent looked at her with an intensity that took her breath away. She would want you to be free. Nina thought about that. Freedom, what did that even mean? She'd been carrying so much for so long, guilt and grief and rage all tangled together. Could she really just put it down? Could she really walk away? I want to go back to Boston, she said finally. I want to go to my grandmother's house. It's been empty since she died, but I still have the key. I want to stand in the kitchen where she made ravioli. I want to sit in the chair where she taught me Italian. I want to remember her the way she was, not through all this blood and darkness. I'll take you there myself. No, Nina shook her head. No, I need to go alone. I need to figure out who I am without all of this. Without you, without your world, without any of it. Vincent looked like he wanted to argue, but then he nodded. I understand, but take this. He pulled out a business card and wrote something on the back. This is my personal number. If you ever need anything at all, you call me. Day or night, promise me. Nina took the card. I promise. And take this. He handed her another envelope, thicker this time. There's $50,000 in here. I know you said you don't want my money, but this isn't my money. This is what you earned. 3 years of work at what you should have been paid. It's yours. No strings, no obligations. Nina looked at the envelope for a long moment before taking it. Thank you. Don't thank me. I'm just trying to do what I should have done 3 years ago. They stood together, and for a moment Vincent looked like he wanted to hug her. But he didn't. He just extended his hand, and she shook it. Your grandmother was the best person I ever knew, he said. And I see her in you. That strength, that fire. Don't let this world extinguish it. I won't. The next morning, Nina was on a bus heading north to Boston. She watched the city disappear behind her. That city that had been both her prison and her salvation. She thought about her mother, about the sacrifices she'd made. She thought about her grandmother, about the legacy of kindness she'd left behind. She thought about Vincent, about the man he was and the man he'd tried to be. And she thought about herself, about who she'd been and who she wanted to become. The bus rolled through small towns and stretches of highway. Nina dozed off as the sun climbed higher, and when she woke they were pulling into the Boston terminal. The city looked different in daylight, cleaner somehow, less haunted. She took a taxi to the north end, to the narrow street where her grandmother's house still stood. It was exactly as she remembered it, red brick, 3 stories with window boxes that had once held geraniums. The key fit in the lock like it had been waiting for her. Inside, everything was covered in dust. But underneath the dust, it was all still there. The furniture her grandmother had loved. The paintings on the walls. The smell, faint but unmistakable, of old cooking and lavender sachets. Nina walked through each room slowly, letting the memories wash over her. Here was the kitchen where she'd learned to make pasta. Here was the living room where her grandmother had taught her Italian. The two of them stumbling through conversations and laughing at mistakes. Here was the bedroom where she'd slept on summer visits. The window looking out onto the street below. And here, in the back of the closet in her grandmother's room, she found something she'd never seen before. A box. A wooden box with her name carved into the lid. Nina's hands trembled as she opened it. Inside were letters. Dozens of them. Letters her grandmother had written but never sent. Letters addressed to Nina, dated from the year her grandmother had died. Nina sat on the floor and began to read. My dearest Nina, the first one began. If you're reading this, then I'm gone. I'm sorry I couldn't say these things to your face, but sometimes the heart knows what the mouth cannot speak. You are the light of my life. From the moment you were born, you filled my world with joy. I look at you and I see the future. I see everything I fought for during the war. All the reasons I risked my life to save others. Because I was fighting for a world where children like you could grow up safe and happy. But I'm worried, my darling. Your mother is in trouble. I can see it even though she tries to hide it from me. She's mixed up with dangerous people, making dangerous choices. I've tried to talk to her, but she won't listen. She says she's doing it for you, to give you opportunities. But I fear the price is too high. There's a man I once knew. His name is Vincent. I helped him when he was young, and he promised he would help my family if we ever needed it. I've written to him. I've told him about you. If something happens to your mother, if you ever find yourself alone and afraid, you must find him. He will help you. He owes me a debt, and he's a man who pays his debts. But Nina, my sweet girl, I hope you never need him. I hope you live a long, peaceful life far away from that dark world. I hope you find love and happiness, and all the beautiful things this life has to offer. Remember me when you cook. Remember me when you speak Italian. Remember me when you show kindness to strangers. That's how we live forever, not in what we take from the world, but in what we give to it. All my love, always and forever. Your Nonna Rose. Nina read letter after letter, each one filled with love and worry and wisdom. Her grandmother had known. She'd known about her mother's troubles. She'd known Nina might end up alone. She'd tried to protect her, even from beyond the grave. The last letter was different. It was dated just days before her grandmother's death. Nina, it read. I'm tired, so very tired. The doctors say it won't be long now. But I'm not afraid. I've lived a good life. I've loved deeply, and been loved in return. I've made a difference. In small ways, in the lives of people who needed help. If there's anything I regret, it's that I won't be there to see the woman you become. But I know you'll be magnificent. You have your mother's strength and my stubbornness. You have a good heart. Never lose that, no matter what this world throws at you. There's a quote I've always loved, from a rabbi I knew during the war. He said, in a world where you can be anything, be kind. That's all that matters in the end, Nina. Not wealth or power or fame. Just kindness, just love. Be kind. Be brave. Be yourself. I love you more than words can say. Nonna. Nina sat on that dusty floor and cried. She cried for her grandmother, for her mother, for the 3 years she'd lost, for the innocence that was gone. She cried until there were no tears left, until she was empty and exhausted and somehow lighter. When she finally stood up, the sun was setting. Golden light streamed through the windows, painting everything in warm tones. Nina walked to the kitchen and opened the cabinets. Most of the dishes were gone, but she found an old pot, a wooden spoon. She found pasta in the pantry, probably years old, but still good. She found olive oil and garlic and canned tomatoes. She cooked her grandmother's recipe, the one she'd been taught as a child. She cooked slowly, carefully, letting the smell fill the house. And as she stirred the sauce, she sang. She sang the old Italian songs her grandmother had loved, her voice filling the empty rooms. When the pasta was ready, she made herself a plate and sat at the kitchen table. She took a bite, and it tasted like home, like memory, like love. And in that moment, Nina made a choice. She would sell this house. She would use the money combined with what Vincent had given her, to go to college, to study social work, to help people the way her grandmother had helped people. She would create something good from all this pain. She would honor the memory of two strong women who had done their best in an impossible world. She would be kind. She would be brave. She would be herself. 3 months later, Nina stood in front of a classroom at Boston University. She was enrolled in the social work program, taking classes in trauma counseling and community organizing. She'd rented a small apartment near campus. Nothing fancy, but it was hers, clean and bright and safe. She hadn't heard from Vincent. She hadn't expected to. But sometimes, late at night, she wondered about him. Wondered if he was all right. Wondered if he'd found any peace. One evening, as she was walking home from the library, her phone rang, unknown number. She almost didn't answer. But something made her pick up. Hello? Nina. It's Vincent. Her heart skipped a beat. Hi, how are you? I'm managing. Listen. I won't keep you. I just wanted you to know something. Okay. I'm getting out. Out of the business, out of that life. I'm moving to Colorado, buying a cabin in the mountains. I'm going to spend whatever time I have left trying to be a better person. Nina felt tears prickling her eyes. That's wonderful. Your grandmother would have wanted that. I hope, he paused. How are you doing? I'm good, really good. I'm in school. I'm studying to be a social worker. Vincent's laugh sounded almost like a sob. Of course you are. Rose would be so proud of you. I hope so. I know so. Another pause. Take care of yourself, Nina. You too, Vincent. She almost hung up, but then she remembered something. Vincent? Yes. Thank you, for everything. For keeping your promise to my grandmother. For giving me a chance to start over. You don't need to thank me. You saved yourself. All I did was open a door. You're the one who walked through it. They said goodbye, and Nina continued her walk home. The air was crisp, autumn turning to winter. People hurried past her, wrapped in scarves and coats, each one carrying their own stories, their own struggles. Nina thought about all the ways a life can change. How one moment, one conversation, one choice can alter everything. How people are connected in ways they don't even realize. How kindness ripples outward, across years and miles, touching lives in ways we can never fully understand. Her grandmother had saved a stranger. That stranger had saved her, and now she would save others. It wasn't perfect or poetic or clean, but it was real. It was human. It was enough. When Nina got home, she found a package waiting at her door. No return address. Inside was a small wooden box. Inside the box was a note and a photograph. The photograph showed a young woman with dark hair and kind eyes, standing in front of a house in the North End. Her grandmother, decades ago, beautiful and strong. The note read, Nina, this was taken the day I left Boston. Your grandmother insisted I take a photo of her so I'd never forget. I never have. I never could. She made me promise to remember what it means to be human. I lost my way for a long time, but I'm trying to find it again. Because of her. Because of you. There's an old Italian saying, La familia non è solo sangue. Family is not only blood. Your grandmother understood that better than anyone. She took in strangers and made them family. She saw beyond the surface to the soul beneath. You have her gift, Nina. Use it well. Con amor. Vincent. Nina held the photograph gently, this image of her grandmother as a young woman full of life and hope. She put it on her dresser, where she could see it every morning when she woke up. And every morning she whispered the same thing. I'll make you proud, Nana. I promise. Years passed. Nina graduated with her master's in social work. She got a job at a nonprofit that helped immigrant families navigate the system. She worked long hours for little pay, but she went home every night feeling like she'd made a difference. She met someone, a teacher named David, who worked with at-risk youth. They fell in love slowly, carefully, both of them carrying their own scars, but willing to be gentle with each other's wounds. They got married in a small ceremony, just friends and colleagues. No family, except the family they'd chosen for themselves. Nina never forgot where she came from. She kept the photo of her grandmother on her desk at work. She told her story, when it felt right, to clients who needed to know that survival was possible. That you could start with nothing and build something meaningful. That the worst moments of your life didn't have to define you. She heard about Vincent twice more. Once 5 years later, when someone sent her a newspaper clipping. There'd been a fire in a small town in Colorado. A cabin in the mountains had burned down, but the article noted that the owner, Vincent Russo, had made it out alive. More than that, he'd run back into the burning building to save his neighbor's dog. Former businessman turns local hero. The headline read. Nina smiled when she read it. Her grandmother's lesson had finally taken root. The second time was 10 years later. She received a letter, forwarded through several addresses. The handwriting was shaky but still legible. Dear Nina. I don't know if this will reach you, but I wanted to try. I'm dying, cancer. The doctors give me a few months, maybe less. I'm not afraid, I've lived longer than I deserved. I wanted you to know that the last 15 years have been the best of my life. I've volunteered at a shelter. I've mentored young people trying to escape gang life. I've tried in small ways to undo some of the harm I caused. I'll never make up for it all. I know that, but I've tried, because of your grandmother. Because of you. There's money set aside for you. $1 million. I know you'll probably give it away. Use it to help others. That's who you are. But it's there if you need it. No strings. Just the final payment on a debt I can never fully repay. Thank you, Nina. Thank you for showing me that people can change, that it's never too late to choose kindness. Give them hell, kid. Vincent. Nina cried when she read the letter. She cried for the young man who'd collapsed on her grandmother's doorstep so long ago. She cried for the daughter who'd been forced to make impossible choices. She cried for the complicated, broken, beautiful mess of being human. She used the money to start a foundation. The Rose Moretti Foundation, dedicated to helping women escape dangerous situations. Domestic violence, exploitation, trafficking. They provided housing, legal help, job training. Everything her grandmother would have done, if she'd had the resources. And every year on her grandmother's birthday, Nina cooked ravioli. She invited everyone she'd helped, everyone who worked at the foundation, everyone who needed a family. They gathered around long tables, dozens of people from all walks of life, and they ate and laughed and told stories. They were family, not by blood, but by choice. By kindness. By the understanding that we save each other again and again in ways both large and small. And somewhere, Nina liked to think, her grandmother was smiling. Because this was what it was all about. This was what she'd fought for all those years ago. Not grand gestures or heroic sacrifices. But this, a table full of people who would have been strangers, now connected by love and ravioli, and the simple act of showing up for each other. One evening, 20 years after that morning she'd scrubbed the marble floor, Nina was at the foundation's office working late. A young woman came in, late teens, thin and scared. She'd been trafficked, she explained haltingly, brought to the city with promises of a good job, then trapped. She'd escaped but had nowhere to go. Nina listened to her story. She heard the fear and the shame and the desperate hope underneath it all. And she remembered. She remembered what it felt like to be powerless, to be invisible. To scrub floors and live in basements and believe you deserved nothing better. What's your name? Nina asked gently. Maria. Maria, listen to me. What happened to you wasn't your fault. You did nothing wrong, and you're not alone anymore. We're going to help you, okay? We're going to find you a safe place to stay. We're going to help you get back on your feet, and we're not going to give up on you. Ever. Maria started to cry. Nina came around the desk and hugged her. This stranger who was no longer a stranger, and let her cry. How do you know? Maria asked through her tears. How do you know it will be okay? Nina thought about her grandmother, about Vincent, about her mother, about all the complicated ways people hurt and heal each other. Because someone helped me when I had nothing, she said. And before that someone helped them. And now I'm helping you. And someday when you're strong again, you'll help someone else. That's how it works. That's how we survive. We save each other. Maria nodded against her shoulder, and Nina held her tighter. Outside, the city hummed with its million stories. People were being hurt, and people were being healed. People were making terrible choices, and people were making brave ones. People were falling, and people were rising. And in one small office, two women held each other in the darkness and waited for the dawn. Because that's what you do. You hold on. You show kindness. You remember that everyone you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about. You do your best, even when your best feels inadequate. You keep going even when you want to quit. You honor the people who saved you by saving others. You turn pain into purpose. You become the person you needed when you were younger. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, you realize that the person scrubbing the floor, speaking a half-forgotten language, was never really invisible at all. She was there all along, waiting to be seen. Waiting for someone to ask the right question. Waiting for her chance to rise. And when that chance came, when that question was asked, everything changed. Not all at once, not perfectly, but enough. Enough to make a difference. Enough to honor a memory. Enough to prove that kindness matters, that people can change, that the smallest act of compassion can ripple across years and lives and generations. Enough to matter. And in the end, isn't that all any of us really wants? To know that we mattered, that we made a difference, that our lives meant something beyond ourselves. Nina Moretti, granddaughter of Rose, daughter of Claire, knew she mattered, not because of wealth or power or fame, but because she'd taken the broken pieces of her life and built something beautiful, because she'd turned her grandmother's legacy of kindness into action, because she'd looked at the darkness and chosen to be light. And every day as she opened the doors of the foundation, as she greeted women who came seeking help, as she proved again and again that nobody is invisible, nobody is forgotten, nobody is beyond saving, she thought of that morning 20 years ago. That morning when she was scrubbing the floor and speaking Italian on the phone. That morning when a dangerous man asked a simple question. That morning when everything changed. And she was grateful. Grateful for the pain that had shaped her. Grateful for the love that had saved her. Grateful for the chance to pass it forward. Because that's what her grandmother had taught her. All those years ago in that kitchen in Boston's North End. Love is not something you keep, it's something you give away. And the more you give, the more it multiplies, spreading like light in the darkness, warming the cold, healing the broken. One person at a time. One act of kindness at a time. One question at a time. Where did you learn that? The answer Nina had discovered wasn't just about language, or family or memory. The answer was about who you choose to be when nobody's watching. The answer was about remembering that we're all connected, all dependent on each other, all capable of both tremendous harm and tremendous good. The answer was about choosing good, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. The answer was love. Always love. And that in the end was enough.